channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. We're doing a little bit more of a stripped down video as we go deep on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I had my out of the theater reaction out the other day. I gave it a 6 out of 10 of my initial thoughts. My son gave it an 8 out of 10. We'll see where my rating is today after I've had a few days to think about this film. And this is a film that's been a long time coming. They announced this a long time ago. And let's be honest, even when they made Crystal Skull, Harrison Ford was probably a little bit too old to be doing that movie. But there are moments in that movie that are fun. I have my issues with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's definitely my least favorite out of the original, 4 films. Let's see where this one stacks up. Now, Steven Spielberg did not come back to direct this film. Actually, Steven Spielberg had nothing to do with this film. Either did George Lucas. And they are sorely missed here. I will say that up front. They brought in a very, very capable, very good, solid director in James Mangold. I love Ford v Ferrari. I like Identity, 3:10 to Yuma. Very capable, very solid director. So that gave me some hope. So I went in with an open mind, but I was kind of like, we'll see where this goes. Now we have Harrison Ford back as our hero, our title character, Indiana Jones. We got Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena Shaw, his goddaughter. We'll talk about her definitely. Toby Jones in this film is Basil Shaw. That's Indiana Jones' best friend during World War II. We get to see him right in the beginning. We'll talk about that in a second. Sala is back. John Rhys Davis is back as Sala, Indy's best friend, and always reliable. He's in this film, not very much, maybe 5 minutes total. Antonio Banderas shows up, and then he gets killed unceremoniously. He's in for about 10, 15 minutes, and then he gets killed unceremoniously. Mads Mikkelsen's in here as Dr. Voller, our main bad guy, as an ex-Nazi, and we'll get into him. Boyd Holbrook's in this film, and Boyd Holbrook really has not much to do in this film other than be a goon for Dr. Voller. He's on screen a lot, but he doesn't get anything interesting to do other than be a hired gun. That's pretty much all he is. And you really never get a sense of his character. He's pretty much wasted here. Now, right in the beginning of the film, we're going to have the best sequence of the whole film takes place in the first 10, 15 minutes of the film. We're transported back to World War II right at the end of the war. And Indy is captured by the Nazis. They use de-aging technology. We'll talk about it in a second. And he's trying to recover artifacts that the Nazis are trying to get out and back to Germany. And Basil, Toby Jones's character, is there as well. And they end up on this train where they find Archimedes' Dial of Destiny. And they end up getting off the train with the dial. Dr. Voller's there. He gets knocked off the train right in the face with a steel rod. And how he survives that, who knows, but he does. Fast forward to 1969. Although I will say the opening sequence is the best part of this movie. It actually feels like an Indiana Jones film. James Mangold does the best work here in the first 15, 20 minutes. I will say that. It feels like an Indiana Jones movie. It has excitement. The action's well done. I actually enjoyed it. A little bit too much green screen that you could tell, but at the end of the day, it's a damn good opening sequence of the film. Then we get transported to 1969. We see Indy as he's working for a different college. We see that his students are very uninterested in listening to him, very different than Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the students are hanging on his every word. He's about to retire. He retires. They have a retirement party for him, and he retreats to a bar to have a drink. And this is where we're introduced to Helena Shaw, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and we'll discuss her. She starts asking about Archimedes' dial. He takes her to the storage locker at the university and shows that he is part of the dial that he had from her father, who kind of went nuts and ended up passing away. She steals it off of Indy, leaves him behind to get beat up by these goons, by Dr. Voller, though we don't know he's working for the CIA, or NASA as a scientist. The CIA is involved, this woman who works for the CIA. And then Helena gets away. It's an action scene that goes on too long. It's not very exciting. A lot of green screen here. It was disappointing how much green screen they used here, considering the budget they had. I know Crystal Skull had the same problems. I had the same problems with Crystal Skull, over-reliance on CGI. This film does the same thing, unfortunately. Then we're off to globetrotting. Here, Helena's going to try to sell the dial at a black market antiquities auction at this hotel. And Sala knows where she's going. Magically, Sala has all this information because the plot needs to happen. Indiana Jones follows suit. They go to this hotel. They end up in a chase, which is probably the second best action scene of this whole film. It's pretty good. It goes on a little too long, but it's pretty well handled by Mangold. And then now they're off. They meet up with Antonio Banderas' character, who's an old friend from the war. They deep dive down to the ocean to find a clue where the rest of the dial is. And unfortunately, Voller catches up. Antonio Banderas and his men get killed, but they escape. And then they're off to find the rest of the dial, which they do. And the dial does tell you where a rift in time is so you can go back in time. Voller's whole plan, and Mads Mikkelsen's good here, don't get me wrong. You could tell he made the character interesting. I'm sure the script was not that great because the whole film, is lacking. You could tell the script was a mixed bag. And Mads Mikkelsen can make reading the phone book interesting. So he's good here. He's just not the most memorable villain. But his whole plan is to go back in time because he was a Nazi, and he even criticizes Hitler. When we're at the opening sequence, we see him criticizing Hitler, making all the mistakes he did. His whole plan is basically to go back in time, get rid of Hitler. He takes control and fixes all the mistakes Hitler made so the Nazi dream could come true. That's his whole goal. And Boyd Holbrook's one of his Nazi thugs. He's a bunch of other Nazi thugs. And they end up going back in time with Indiana. By this point, he got shot in the chest, but he lives through the rest of the film, which is a good thing. Because originally there was rumors that they were killing Indiana Jones and Hell in a Shaw was going to take his place, which would have been total dog shit. They go back in time to Archimedes' time. See, Voller miscalculated. Indy tried to warn him while they're on this plane. They go back to Archimedes' time. Voller and all of his goons get killed. Indy and Helena are on this rock ledge, and Archimedes comes up and meets them. Indy decides all of a sudden he's going to give up on life. He wants Helena to leave him here, which I call bullshit on. Uncharacteristic, never would have happened, I'm sorry. She tells him no, punches him in the face, which, oh God, so cringeworthy. And thank God she has a sidekick like Short Round who flew a plane, he never flew before, flew a plane through the rift. They get on a plane, Indy wakes up in his shitty apartment in New York City. Marion shows up at the end. They kind of reconnect because during the film we find out that Mutt died during the war. He signed up to go into the war. He got killed. And even at one point, Helena asked Indy what he would do if he could go back in time. And he said he would stop his son from going to war because he's going to die. It drove a wedge between Indy and Marion, and they were getting a divorce. Marion shows up at the end, feels very unearned and kind of tacked on. Kind of a happy ending, and that's the end of the film. Let's get into positives because I have quite a few negatives. The positive is the first 15, 20 minutes is really, really good. It's the best part of the whole film is that 15, 20 minutes, the opening 15, 20 minutes. The aging on Harrison Ford is pretty good. When they try to do a close-up or the angle switches, you can tell it's CGI because the face gets kind of rubbery and distorted. Unfortunately, they're still not completely there yet, although I will say at moments during this opening sequence, it's probably the best I've ever seen this technology used. But then there's moments where it looks bad. But overall, they keep it in darkness, so they try to mask the low points in the technology, which there are some still. The opening 15, 20 minutes are the best part. There's that other action, that chase sequence when they get out of the black market auction that's pretty well handled, though it goes on too long. Most of the action is very not that great. It's well shot, but it's not very exciting. It goes on too long. It's dragged out. The whole movie's too long, but let's stick on the positives. Harrison Ford's still good here, although very much older, and even moments during the film where you're like, yeah, they shouldn't have made this film. And again, I'll go back to, this film was unneeded, and by me, unwanted. We didn't need a fifth one. I thought, even though Crystal Skull's a mixed bag for sure, at least him and Marion got married at the end. There was a happy ending. I think the best way to cap this off was back in Last Crusade when him and his father, Marcus, and Saul rode off into the sunset. That is the pitch perfect ending for Indiana Jones. But I thought in Crystal Skull they did wrap it up pretty nicely with him and Marion getting married finally to live happy ever after. This one does not have any of that. But Archimedes' dial is not my favorite MacGuffin they've ever used, but it's okay. I like it better than the Crystal Skull, I'll give it that. And when they go back in time, it didn't bother me all that much. I don't think it's handled all that well, because there's other questions, because in the beginning of through the film, when Helena asked Indy what he would use the dial for, if he could go back in time, and he said he would use it to go back and see Mutt to talk him out of going to war because he's going to die. That never crosses Indy's mind once he realizes it is possible to go through a rift in time and go back in time. Never crosses his mind, never comes up again. I thought that was an odd choice. But to go back and they see, them fighting the Romans, it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. It looks cool, and I did enjoy it. The ending with Marion just feels like they threw it in there for nostalgia bait because they do the whole like where does it hurt thing from the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It just felt out of place and unnecessary. Let's go on to negatives because there's many. Number one glaring negative, besides the movie's too long, we'll get into that in a second, is Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. She's basically a complete asshole. When you're first introduced to her, she's okay, and then it's all downhill after that. She's snarky, she's full of herself, and she could do nothing wrong in her eyes. She goes, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm self-reliant. And it's just, when you have to tell the audience that you're none of those things, if you got to tell me that, you got to show me it. I don't need to hear you say it because I'm not going to believe you. And I never believed that, first of all, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is capable of doing these things. And I never heard of this actress before this movie. She got cast in this movie. I know she's done other things. I was not impressed with her. I didn't think her and Harrison Ford had any chemistry whatsoever. She came across as an insufferable asshole through 90% of this movie. And I couldn't connect with her character. It was just a character that was unnecessary. It got shoehorned in here, I'm sure, because they wanted another female lead. I think there was a simpler way to go. She didn't work. I think there's a way you can make a character like that work with the right actress. She is definitely not, or she wasn't the right actress for this role. I'm going to say that up front. She never worked for me, not through any of the movie really. And that brings the movie down big time. The other problem is, this movie's kind of a mess, and you can tell it's been reshot and re-edited out the ass. And we know about all the behind-the-scenes problems. They went back and rejiggered a lot of things. They reshot a lot of things. This movie had a $295, almost $300 million budget, and there was not one point in this movie where I thought this movie cost $300 million. If I was Disney, I'd want an audit of the books and see where every dime went because somebody pissed some money away on this film. And heads should roll over this. I'm not going to say the movie's a total abomination, but it's definitely a step down in quality. And I'm going to say it now, this movie's worse than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I have issues with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This movie's worse. This is the worst Indiana Jones film we've ever gotten. I thought there was promise. Those first 15, 20 minutes were so good. And then the rest of it's such a mixed bag, mostly bad. Besides Harrison Ford and Mads Mikkelsen and a few of the action scenes, other than that, there's not a whole lot here to like, considering the original trilogy. This is a big step down, and what hurt it most is I just saw Raiders of the Lost Ark on the big screen about 3 weeks ago. And to see this now just tells you how far we've fallen in this franchise. Because Raiders of the Lost Ark is far superior. So's Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Kingdom of Crystal Skull is even better, and I have problems with that film. It's missing the Spielberg touch. Mangold tries his best to ape Spielberg here, but nobody can out Spielberg. He gets close in that first 15, 20 minutes, and the rest of the film's nowhere near what Spielberg could have possibly have done with this film. I don't know, a lot of things went wrong here. It's too long. It's 2 hours and 34 minutes long. There is no reason, absolutely none, that this movie should be that long. There's easily 15, 20 minutes that this movie can lose. I don't know what's the obsession with movies have to be 2 hours and 30 minutes or 3 hours long now. I don't mind it if it's justified. Sorry. Still getting over my sinus infection from Florida. But there's nothing in this movie that dictates 2 hours and 34 minutes long. And there's times where you can feel it. It drags in the middle. There's scenes that just go on too long for no reason. No benefit to the story whatsoever. And that's one thing you can never say, especially about the original 3 movies. Those were edited for maximum impact. The pace was everything in those first 3 films. And I think that goes back to Spielberg. Spielberg understands pacing. Here, scenes go on longer than they should for no reason. There's a tremendous amount of fat in this movie that don't need to be there, unfortunately. And that drags the movie down as well. It's not just the Phoebe Waller-Bridge character. It's the length. No reason. Absolutely none. You can't convince me of it after seeing this film. At the end of the day, I'm sorry to say, this movie, Indy already got the send-off he deserved. We didn't need this movie. The send-off here is far below what we've gotten in the past. Unfortunately, this is a big mess here. It's not a complete dumpster fire. There's some good things here, but there's more bad than good. And I gave it a 6 out of 10 out of theater. Now thinking about it a little bit, I'm going to knock it down a little bit. I give this movie a 5.5 out of 10 5.5 out of 10 for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is honestly one of the entries where I'll probably never buy it. I'll watch it when it's streaming just to see it again, see if I feel a little differently. I don't feel like this is a purchase-worthy movie. 5.5 out of 10 for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Have you seen it yet? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Join me here. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with some more reviews for Extraction 2 and Transformers 1. But until next time, bye.